Thank you for having me. I wanted to start just with a note on my title, The Pessimistic Entrepreneur. I mean, I think pessimism gets a really bad rap, and hopefully I can tell you today why pessimism is actually a positive thing as an entrepreneur. So I'm going to start with a story. About 7 years ago, when my co-founder, Matt Singer, and I were first getting our startup off the ground, we were lucky enough to get a meeting with this very high-profile, big-shot West Coast venture capitalist. So we flew out to California, and we had this presentation that we thought was creative and compelling and persuasive. And throughout our entire 30-minute presentation, this big shot sat there, poker-faced. And at the end, he just got up and walked out and didn't ask any questions. So as we were walking back to the car, Matt turned to me for a high five. And he was like, oh my gosh, we did such a great job. We were so thorough that he didn't even have any questions. I was like, Matt, man, when they don't ask questions, that's a really bad sign, not a good one. And so as you can imagine, we never heard from this guy again. I mean, I think I saw him a few weeks later at some industry event, and I swear he was actually hiding from us. But I'm telling the story not to give you a bad feeling about venture capitalists or to scare you off from raising money. I'm telling you to talk about my default setting. I'm a pessimist, and I'm an entrepreneur. And a lot of you probably think that a pessimistic entrepreneur is an oxymoron, right? Like entrepreneurs are supposed to be able to believe that they're growing unicorns overnight. Any article you read about entrepreneurship will tell you that like optimism is the #1 success factor. And my business partner, Matt, if you ask him, he would say that I'm a bit of a buzzkill. But today I want to tell you that pessimism not only gets a bad rap, it's not only important for your business, but it's absolutely critical to success. I'm going to illustrate 4 chapters in my own entrepreneurial journey where I think pessimism, which I'm defining as the ability to imagine the absolute worst thing that could happen and then innovate around it, is essential to our company not only surviving, but thriving. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I trace my Debbie Downer attitude to my childhood in rural Vermont. I grew up on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere, and when it snowed, my sister and our neighbor would drag their sleds to the top of this big hill next door. They would go sliding down that hill, over the dirt road, into the barn across the street, and they were screaming with laughter, and I was running after them screaming that they were going to get killed because a car was going to hit them. Of course, we got like 2 or 3 cars a day in our town, so that wasn't going to happen. But our town was so small with 1,800 people that when my mother subscribed to the New York Times, it actually took us 4 days to get it in the mail. So I think it may have been a case of supply and demand, but I developed a hunger for news and a real passion for the media that stuck with me until today. So I eventually ended up in finance. All of finance. I did M&A, I did private equity, I did hedge funds, I raised a SPAC. And it was in private equity that I caught the QVC bug. I don't know how many of you are familiar with QVC, but if there's a woman in elastic waistband pants selling musical Christmas sweaters in July, I was there. From a purely business perspective, if you look at these distribution channels, they're selling over $10 billion a year, and they're driving multiples of those revenues to traditional retailers. So I had known Matt Singer, one of QVC's youngest successful vendors, for several years. We relied on him as a consultant to help us understand the television shopping industry. And Matt and I got to talking, and it was clear that we shared a common vision about the future of communication and the role that technology would play in that future. We eventually decided to team up, and I have to stop here and interject that your choice of co-founder, it might seem obvious, but it's the most important decision you will make as an entrepreneur. Building a startup is a longer, tougher road than you realize, and your partner is like your spouse. You are together for better and for worse. So I was extremely fortunate to find Matt, who's not only a creative genius, very smart and hardworking, but he's sort of the optimistic yin to my pessimistic yang. So Matt and I started thinking about the power of video communication. At any one point in time, there are 2 million people watching QVC. A meaningful number of those people get motivated to take action in the form of buy it now. So we wanted to know, how could we take the power of this communication forum and put it into the hands of more people? And our answer was Videolicious. So we envisioned Videolicious as the Microsoft PowerPoint of video. Do any of you remember life before Microsoft PowerPoint? You had these like plastic overheads and you were getting messy with all the markers, or you were outsourcing it to like an expensive third-party presentation preparer who was using this now long obsolete software. And it was much the same way for video. If you wanted like a professional business level video, you had to do the same thing. You had to find a videographer, spend a lot of money, or you were using more complicated time-consuming software like Adobe Premiere or iMovie. So we built, oops, wrong way. We built the Video SKU terminal. It allowed a single person with no special skills, no special training, to create business-level video instantly. And who wouldn't benefit from more video, right? I mean, think about it. Video job interviews, video hotel reviews, video dating sites. Video makes everything better. But it turns out that everything isn't the best target market for a startup. So after signing a record company and then a hotel chain, Matt and I realized that our best asset was actually our background in retail and our background at QVC. We understood the retail space. We knew that the future of retail was the web, and that more and more online content was going to be video. So we began pitching Video SKU to large retailers. It was to be used in their photo studios, to be integrated into their existing workflow, and it allowed them to scale video at the product level like they had never done before, automatically, instantly, and very affordably. We found that our videos were reducing returns by 50% or more. They were increasing conversions to sales in the double-digit percentages. They were driving more web traffic by improving search engine rankings. So within a year or two, this focus paid off. We counted most of the top 50 retailers as customers, including Macy's, Costco, Bed Bath & Beyond, Sears, as our clients. I mean, our product was so good that we cold called Walmart and sold a license. I think our proudest day was when we actually sold a Video SKU license to QVC. I mean, they have a giant TV studio, but they really weren't interested in spending their time creating a lot of web content. Amazon invested in us. The New York Times and other national press wrote about us. I mean, we were really killing it. And here's where my natural pessimism began to kick in. Our vision was still to bring high-quality video to everyone, but you're not going to be able to bring this to everyone. I mean, it was huge. It was a nightmare just getting this thing through the airport. If they made me check my bag, I never knew if the pieces were going to fit together when I got it out of baggage claim. I threw my back out shoving this thing through the airport. I mean, can you imagine going through O'Hare with a full video camera and light set? I mean, it wasn't very convenient. But second, I could see that it was going to be tough to get to scale. We had revenues from day one, but our vision, our original vision, if you remember, was to bring video to everybody. And even if we got all 100 of the top nation's retailers, that wasn't everybody. We weren't achieving the scale that we thought we could. And finally, I realized that unfortunately our client relationships were a little bit tenuous. You know, each retailer was paying us a 5- and 6-figure annual license. They loved us. They were making thousands of videos. But the problem was, in a way, we were so easy to use that in each company, only 2 or 3 people actually used our software. So we were extremely vulnerable to turnover in each company. If somebody left or got promoted, one of our few points of contact in that company was gone. So I remember one time, one of our contracts was one of the largest retailers. The main Video SKU operator, he left for a better gig. And I think it took us 2 weeks just to get somebody on the phone after that. So it was clear that the Video SKU terminal just wasn't going to be the right form factor to really realize our vision. And then this came out, the iPhone 4. As you all may remember, it had a front-facing camera with good enough resolution for business-appropriate video, enough processing power on device for sophisticated editing tools. This was clearly the answer. But not everybody in our company was convinced. I mean, think about it. I was telling everybody to turn away from a lucrative legacy product. We were still signing customers. We were still making a lot of money. And dump a ton of development resources, time, and money on a fully mobile platform. I mean, it wasn't easy. But I was pessimistic enough that I was envisioning the worst-case scenario, and I didn't want somebody else to leapfrog us to this technology. Eventually, we embraced mobile, and that set the stage for our next stage of growth. So in May 2011, we released the Videolicious mobile platform on the App Store. Videolicious was actually the first app to offer a professional level of automatic editing. I mean, B-roll, lower thirds, transitions, voiceovers. The day we launched, Apple featured us as one of their best new apps in the App Store. We had hundreds of thousands of downloads in the first week or two. We were exceeding even Matt's optimistic expectations. We were viral. We had launched with two revenue streams. The prosumer version, which was $120 a year. It let small businesses and individuals cheaply and quickly create professional, business-appropriate video. And we also had a corporate version, which granted licenses to larger companies for our more advanced technology, much more sophisticated editing suite, as well as a complete back-end with customized integrations, permission management, and all sorts of other features. And our timing was impeccable. Investors started offering us sort of indecent sums of money to become the Instagram of video. And every time we left one of these very upbeat venture capital meetings, I wanted to throw up. First of all, I was pretty sure that Instagram was going to be the Instagram of video. And more importantly, I actually wanted our business to make money. I wanted to be cash flow positive. I mean, having lots of users is very exciting. But users doesn't necessarily translate into lots of revenue. And with my pessimistic tendencies, I wasn't buying the hype. I didn't want to be dependent on escalating fundraising rounds. I didn't want to be dependent on the whims of the venture capital market. I mean, we had thousands of paying customers and some early business users, but the truth is, I just didn't think that on the consumer side, we could get to break even fast enough, and that we could serve both consumers and businesses well, serving two masters at the same time. So let me elaborate just for a second on that second point. Matt is a natural salesman. His enthusiasm is infectious. But even with his skills, we'd walk into a Fortune 500 client, and we'd show them our really robust, sophisticated software solution with all of the customization and backend, and they would be sold. But they'd pull up our website, and we would quote them a 5- and 6-figure contract, and they would see it selling for $120 a head. That was a really tough sale. It was hard to explain what was going on there. So eventually, with enough of my haranguing, we discontinued the prosumer version. We unplugged that cash register so that we could really follow the bigger market opportunity. That pessimistic view of the world allowed us to realign our entire organization from website to customer support to design around the enterprise market. And that's what really helped us get to where we are today. So now we had this great mobile platform. We had a truly focused business product. And suddenly we were making tons of sales to all the major media companies. Hearst, Timing, Meredith, Gannett. They loved us. Even though enterprise sales are usually a long sales cycle, they can take months to close. I think we closed the New York Times in a week. It was great. It was so exhilarating and gratifying to see that this very difficult decision to cut off the consumers was actually paying off. Matt, of course, was popping the champagne, and I came to rain on everyone's parade. You see, I think it's much harder to achieve lasting success with a revolutionary product, as opposed to an evolutionary product. A product that's just improving on existing workflow it's much easier for a company to understand and integrate, right? But if you're entirely changing the way things are done, if you're changing the scale of even what's possible for people, you can't expect a company to understand how to do that all on their own. So take our media clients as an example. Just because you're giving reporters Microsoft Word, that doesn't mean a news story is going to write itself. And just because you give a reporter a great video tool, doesn't mean a video story is going to start filing itself. This is not a build it and they will come product. This fact was driven home for me after we trained staff at one very large publication. The training had gone great. Everybody loved the product. The journalists were practically gushing as much as a journalist will gush. We couldn't wait to start seeing their videos rolling in. And it was a few weeks later when I was coming home from a business trip, and I happened to be sitting next to one of these journalists on the airplane. You know, she turned to me and she said how much she loved Videolicious. And then she asked me, do you know when we actually get to use this software? I mean, they were supposed to be using this from day one. Clearly something wasn't connecting. So for the next year, I was like Chicken Little. I was telling everybody we were going out of business. All of our customers were canceling unless we could create a customer success process. I mean, we really had to help people understand the how, when, what, where, why of video. We had to spoon feed it to them, or we were going to go out of business. So my pessimistic attitude about what could happen actually meant that it never did, thank goodness. At the end of the year, almost all of our clients renewed, and most of them renewed for a 3-year term. So 6 years into this startup, we had found the right technology, the right business strategy, our customers loved us, and we were signing new customers all the time. We were completely dominating the media and real estate industries. And as you can imagine, as the in-house pessimist, I wasn't feeling great. So why not? Look at this slide. This is a newspaper industry. On the left-hand side, you have revenues, which over the last 8 years were down 50%. On the right-hand side, you have employment, which was down 50%. I mean, do you blame me for being pessimistic? I love media, okay? My first job was at a radio station when I was 14. I wrote for our town's newspaper. I interned at the press office at the White House. But as much as I'm passionate about media, I don't want my business to be dependent on a market that has trends like this. Media is undergoing a transformative shift, a massive disruption. I mean, and frankly, that's why they embraced Videolicious in the first place, right? So with traditional advertising dollars being siphoned off to new media or evaporating entirely, if you're a media company, you know you have to innovate if you want to survive. They understand that video is one of the best, most monetizable forms of content. And media companies recognize the need to make more video, better video, and turn all of their reporters into videographers. I mean, we've landed investment from the former Washington Post companies, Graham Holdings, and the Knight Foundation. We love media. But to keep growing, I knew it was time to move beyond our wonderful, adoring early users and into the larger marketplace. And in this case, I unfortunately didn't need much help making my case. One of our media clients, a very successful publication, making thousands of videos with our software, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. First, they started selling assets. Then they started laying off journalists. And eventually, we got a cancellation notice. I mean, the writing was on the wall. But I'm not saying we're giving up on media. I mean, I think Videolicious allows reporters to report with an immediacy and an intimacy that's really important. Just one example from last year. During the Ferguson riots, one of our television station clients, they showed up with a full TV crew. All of their equipment got smashed, but the reporter was able to whip out her iPhone and using Videolicious and her iPhone, have a story filed, fully professionally edited, and on air in 15 minutes. And I think that's important work. But reality was setting in. We needed to translate our core competency to other industries. And frankly, some of those same forces that were disrupting media were actually giving us opportunities elsewhere. All of companies are becoming their own news organizations. All of them have to fill Facebook and Twitter feeds. They're all sending messages from CEOs and department heads and research analysts. Their salespeople are sharing company updates with customer prospects. And Videolicious can help all of them tell their stories better with video. So just one prime example, Rich's Foods, one of our clients, are a $3.5 billion food wholesaler. They gave Videolicious to their wholesale sales force, and they were able to show that using Videolicious videos, they increased revenues 12% on those sales. So that is our future. So here we are today, a thriving company, headed by two founders. One, a textbook optimistic entrepreneur, and me, the big wet blanket. I don't want to leave you with a negative impression. I'm not advocating that you should walk around saying everything stinks. Worst of all, don't go back and yell at all your staff. What I'm saying is, don't believe your own hype. Don't ever let your guard down. I mean, think about chess. A grandmaster can see 3 moves ahead. How many moves are you seeing? I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of an appreciation for pessimism, because the whole point of pessimism is actually to think about the absolute worst thing that could happen and then making sure that it never does. Thank you.